right, thanks for tuning in once again to more New England Patriots talk on Pat's Probe with Evan Lazar of CLNSmedia.com and also Patriots Press Pass on YouTube. Evan, how's it going?
It's going well, Greg. It's short week here this week. Turn around quickly, ride the 4-game win streak. Take care of business in Atlanta, right? That's the mantra right now is don't avoid the letdown.
That's right.
Avoid the letdown. You're not going to beat every team 45-7 like the Patriots did last week against Cleveland. So this week is all about just taking care of business on the road trip and making sure that you keep this going because the Falcons was one of those games, and we're going to have Kevin on here in a second, and I don't want to offend him by any means, but you looked at the schedule and you said, okay, well, they got 2 against Buffalo coming up. They got 1 against Tennessee coming up. This is one of those games that in order to get to 10-11 wins for the Patriots on the season, they absolutely have to have.
Oh, absolutely. We talked about it last week. If the Patriots beat Cleveland, or no matter what the happened in the game, would they be able to learn from the Houston game? Even though it wasn't a short week, right, it was still going to be a hard-fought Cleveland game. And how would they affect in any way the Houston game? So you would think it would be a reminder, and that's not only what good coaching is all about, but young players, Mac Jones, and a lot of other players that have not been around for the Patriots very long. So I'm sure they understand the situation. Every game now is a huge game for New England because not only are they trying to potentially make the postseason, things are looking pretty good for that possibility right now, but who knows? They have 2 more games with the Buffalo Bills. They can think division title too, the way the Bills have kind of let down a little bit this year. You mentioned Kevin. That guy is Kevin Knight. He's on the left of the screen here. And, of course, Kevin with the Falcoholic at thefalcoholic.com. And also you can find out about the Atlanta Falcons on the Falcoholic YouTube channel. And Kevin's been with us many times before. Kevin, how's it going?
Good. Yeah, Patriots excitement, Falcons, depression is very familiar. Very familiar feel to this matchup for me. So,
well, it's and the interesting thing about this matchup is that Atlanta has not won yet at home. So, matter of fact, the Falcons have dropped 5 straight at home. Is that what fans are? The media, they kind of talking about that. Is that like a big deal that they can't win home games?
I mean, I think it's sort of overshadowed because it's like such a minor footnote on this season, especially when you're getting blown out by 40 points against Dallas. So it's like me. I think it's, interesting to talk about, but the stadium's expensive. It's a great stadium, but it's expensive. And until this team starts, showing they can actually win games, I don't think people are shelling out the money to go. And, it's basically treated like neutral site or away at this point because they haven't played well at all at home this year.
So there'll probably be a lot of Patriot fans at the game.
I imagine so. Yeah. There's been a lot of fans of all stripes there. The only fans they seem to be missing are Falcons fans. So,
well, it is a really nice stadium. I've been lucky enough to go down there for Super Bowl 53, and it's a fantastic. It's like a spaceship. It's like It's literally like a Tesla of stadiums, right? With the way that the roof can move. And I'll never forget Bill Belichick before kickoff of Super Bowl 53 screaming at the referees about the roof because the Patriots were told that the roof was going to be closed by the time kickoff happened. They wanted to leave the roof open for the national anthem and for the pregame festivities because they were going to set off fireworks or something like that. So Bill was told that the roof was then going to be closed once kickoff happened. And then the referees come up to him maybe 5 minutes before all the festivities begin, and they tell him that the roof is not going to close in time for kickoff. So now the roof is going to be open for the opening kickoff of the game. And Belichick loses his mind on the referees because they've planned all 2 weeks long for the roof to be closed, and now it's going to be open, and they don't know how the wind is going to be, and they don't know how the ball is going to travel. Of course, it ended up not mattering one bit if the roof was open or closed, but I'll never forget that. It was hilarious.
Yep. That's Belichick for you. He's a stickler for that kind of stuff.
Well, the big name for the Falcons, really the big story is Calvin Ridley, and he's not around. So what's going on with Calvin Ridley?
I mean, it's mental health, and that's the only thing we know in terms of details. So obviously, we hope he takes the time he needs and is able to come back at a point where, he's feeling good and can contribute this year. And I think we all expect that will happen at some point. But this was not a Falcons offense that was built to weather the loss of Calvin Ridley in any way, because the rest of the wide receiver core is severely lacking. And, you could see it on full display against Dallas last week.
Well, but there have been other games that the Saints. I mean, where did that come from? So explain what happened in the games that we understand what happened when they beat up on the Jets, but just pick that game because there have been multiple games.
So ignore the Jets.
Yeah, I'm going to ignore it because anybody can do that. So how were they successful in the games against the Saints without Calvin Ridley?
Well, part of it's protection. Matt Ryan, if he's kept clean, he's still going to be really good. So when they've been able to keep him clean, he's played really well. The other part of it's Cordarrelle Patterson, who's like the most electric player in the NFL this year, outside of like Deebo Samuel and Cooper Kupp, maybe, which is, I didn't have that on my bingo card. I was excited about Patterson as like a kick returner, maybe a little gadgety player, but he's been better than anyone could have expected as a running back, as a receiver.
You mean you didn't pick him up in our dynasty league?
Oh, you did. He's on my team. Yeah.
Not in week one. Not until after the first game, right?
I didn't draft him. Yeah. But once he left the Dallas game, that offense went in the tank. And they have Kyle Pitts, who's, still the best rookie tight end, one of the best rookie tight ends that we'll ever see. And he's going to have, he still has over 500 yards. He's had a good season, but he's now like the only legitimate threat on offense. And like Russell Gage, who's a guy that a lot of Falcons fans really liked, and they thought maybe he could step up as the wide receiver 2 this year, hasn't done it. And I think part of that's Arthur Smith's offense. Like he doesn't really use the slot receiver. He prefers to have 2 tight ends out there. And it shows. Like it's taken a while to get packages out there for Russell Gage. And when Gage has been called upon, he hasn't really done it outside of the Saints game. He's had drops. He hasn't been able to hold on to the football. Just hasn't been able to make clutch plays. And then if Gage isn't doing what you need to do, it's Tajay Sharp, who's played as expected, as like a complimentary sort of possession receiver, and Olamide Zaccheaus, who's like probably your wide receiver 4 on a respectable receiving core.
And he has the most snaps.
Right now it's yeah. So it's a severely lacking weapons department. Hayden Hurst has been invisible. I don't know why he hasn't had a bigger role. He also left the Dallas game. So the Falcons just lost. They couldn't afford to lose anyone else after Ridley went down. And then they lost Patterson, and that was the end of the offense. And Dallas, to their credit, like even without Randy Gregory, were able to get pressure on Ryan, and that messed with the offense. And then they got behind early, and it was like, okay, now we're just going to pin our ears back because you're down 21 points, in the first quarter. And then, it was all over from there. The other problem with the Falcons offense is they can't run the ball at all. Patterson sometimes can break off a big run, but he's not like a 15, 20 carry a game guy. That's just not, really what you're going to want from him. Mike Davis has been a massive disappointment, hasn't really been able to get anything going on the ground. They used Wayne Gallman more last week against the Cowboys, and, he was respectable, but, the lack of a run game is really hurting Arthur Smith's offense because he's molded the game into molded his offense, which coming from Tennessee, it was like Derrick Henry's going to blast you, and then we're going to chuck it deep behind Derrick Henry when you get to pull your safeties up, and we're going to make it rain, and, it's going to be great. The Falcons have been really good throwing deep. Matt Ryan's had sort of a resurgence this year, so I think there is something to, Arthur Smith being a really good coach to help the quarterbacks, unlock that deep part of the passing game, but they don't have the talent at receiver to sort of take advantage of, short to intermediate matchups right now. These guys aren't creating separation. And without a running game to pull safeties down, you're having to throw against cover 2 on your deep shots. And it's resulting in this super high variance offense where if they're hitting those deep shots, they can be deadly and they can move the ball and they can, beat teams. But if they're not hitting those deep shots and they get behind, it can get really ugly really fast, which is what happened in week 1. It happened against the Panthers, which they didn't really get behind, just the Panthers have a great defense. And, against Dallas, it looked like for the first 2 drives of that game, it was going to be a shootout. And then I don't know they lost Patterson after that second drive, and it was game over for the offense. I don't think they moved the ball past midfield after that. So
sounds like a good matchup for the Patriots, Evan. The way that the matchup. Patriots aren't going to give away the big plays.
Yeah, it's funny because in 2018, Cordell Patterson was a fan favorite here in New England. Everybody loves CP, and he started to do some of the things that he's doing with the Falcons back then, playing out of the backfield. There was this period of time where the Patriots had multiple injuries at running back, and Patterson was actually their primary running back for 2 weeks just as a fill-in. And then he was doing some other things at wide receiver, obviously returning kickoffs and all the whole thing that he's doing now at Atlanta is just kind of that on steroids, right? Arthur Smith has just kind of taken it to a next level with Patterson. And then Bill Belichick just spoke about 45 minutes ago before we came on here, and he gave a very long-winded answer about how dynamic Kyle Pitts is, right? Just his ability to line up outside as a receiver or in line as a tight end and block. And he compared him right there with Waller and Kelsey and Kittle, and he named those guys by name and said, Pitts, right in the same conversation. So it's clear that the Patriots really respect those 2 guys. Now, Patterson might not play in this game, right? That's at least what was reported earlier in the week. And we know that Belichick is not going to give a 20-minute answer at his press conference about Kyle Pitts and then let Kyle Pitts beat him on prime time tomorrow night. So my question for you, Kevin, is who else should Patriots fans be worried about in this Falcons offense? Because they're going to have a Belichick special ready for Kyle Pitts. He's going to get the kitchen sink thrown at him. He's going to get jammed at the line of scrimmage. He's going to get doubled down the field. He's going to get bracketed. He's going to have one guy outside of him, one guy inside of him, and they're probably going to put a linebacker in his face at the line of scrimmage and jam him when he comes off the line. So it's going to be anybody but Pitts for the Patriots. So the question is who could that anybody be in an ideal world for the Falcons that could actually go out there and spoil the party here for New England?
I mean, that's the problem with this Falcons team is that right now without Ridley and especially without Patterson, they don't have anyone else to punish you for being like, we're going to dedicate our entire game plan to Kyle Pitts.
Right.
So now, you're going to leave Calvin Ridley in one-on-one and he's going to, be able to streak downfield and beat you deep. They don't have that. They don't even have Cordell Patterson, who has, been doing that somehow. So without those 2 guys, I guess they said Patterson will be a game time call. I doubt he plays. But it's the best thing for the Falcons is probably to just spread it around. I think in terms of guys like Lamade Zaccheaus and Tajay Sharp, those guys are like solid, complementary options, and they can, make plays for you, but they're not going to be putting up this massive stat line. And, I guess maybe Russell Gage is who you're sort of hoping the Falcons can finally unlock and use more as like a primary weapon. But I don't think that's really ever going to be his game. I think Gage is a wide receiver 3 who, totally flourished with Julio and Calvin Ridley and was kind of feasting on, inferior slot corners. But that's not going to be the case in New England. It's really hard to run your offense through a traditional slot receiver and not, sort of one of these new breed slot receivers like a CeeDee Lamb. Falcons, saw that last week firsthand. And, they don't have a run game either. So it's really, they're just going to have to spread the ball around and hope for the best.
It sounds like they're going to need turnovers. It sounds like they're going to need a bad day from the rookie quarterback.
Well, it's interesting because I wanted to ask you about Dean Pease in a second, but it's interesting because the Patriots over the last month, one of the biggest storylines here has been how their defense has played a lot more zone coverage in the back end than we usually see a ton of man with Belichick, but they've turned to more zone coverage because it fits their personnel a little bit better this year without Stephon Gilmore anymore, and they had Jonathan Jones go on injured reserve, so it fits their guys better to play zone. But Matt Ryan is not Sam Darnold or Justin Herbert or last week with Baker Mayfield as younger quarterbacks, where when you start spinning the zone dial, right, and you see this with Peace, right, where you go one high, two high, and you don't know what you're getting post snap, those quarterbacks can get confused and rattled by that type of strategy. I don't anticipate that Ryan will be confused or rattled by the Patriots rotating coverage. So if the Patriots sit back in zone and the numbers actually bear this out, then Matt Ryan is going to torch him, right? And then really in man coverage, if you double Kyle Pitts out of the game and you don't let Ryan beat you throwing to Kyle Pitts, then you have to like your chances if you're the Patriots with Jalen Mills and J.C. Jackson on, Russell Gage or whatever the second receiver is that they put out there.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan has been sharp. Even against Dallas, he was sharp. The Cowboys had 10 passes defensed in that game, which is really an indictment of the receivers not being able to create any separation. They also had some drops. So, Ryan had like over 20 attempts. 10 of them were broken up by Dallas defenders, and I think there were 3 drops as well. So, it wasn't like Ryan had a bad day in terms of actually being on target with his throws. He's just being let down by a supporting cast. So, yeah, I mean, I think if the space is there and the Falcons receivers actually catch the ball and create some separation possibly, then, it's possible the Falcons offense, and Ryan, are able to move the ball, but there's just not a dynamic threat out there. And clearly, like we saw against Dallas, Ryan is being let down by this supporting cast right now. And you mentioned, the defense too. Like, I think Dean Pease is pretty much squeezing what he can out of this defense. But I mean, I think this defense has a case for being the least talented in the entire league. You've got Grady Jarrett and you got AJ Terrell and you got Deion Jones, who's having, a good year by his standards, and that's it. Dante Fowler just came off IR. He was invisible against the Cowboys. He has 2 sacks, leads the team. They have the worst pass rush in the NFL. The other corners, Fabian Moreau's been okay. Isaiah Oliver was actually having a great season in the slot before he went on IR for the season. They just don't have the talent anywhere. And Dean Pease is gonna cook something up against bad offenses. The Saints with Trevor Siemian, he was able to cook something up to keep them down. He was able to keep, the Panthers to 19 points. He was able to keep, the Jets mostly in check. When they've played poor offenses, they don't necessarily get blasted by bad offenses. And I think that is Dean Pease sort of cooking something up. But against, you saw it against Dallas again, against a team that's legitimately great in terms of their personnel or has, a lot of answers or is well-coached offense, they don't have any answers. They don't have any way to slow it down. They just simply don't have the players to do it. And they're bad at stopping the run. They can't cover the slot at all. Avery Williams, I think, can play against, mediocre slot receivers. He's a 6th-round rookie. I don't know what else you expect. CeeDee Lamb just ate his lunch like every single time he was matched up with him. So, the Falcons defense is not really reliable to stop good offenses, and I think that's what we're looking at in the Patriots. So
we're looking at
that's really going to
go ahead, Evan.
Go ahead, Greg. No, that's really going to just be the key to me is for Peace, who actually was the Patriots defensive coordinator once upon a time for a few years, and you can tell that his Belichick roots are still with him to a degree. Runs a lot of cover too. Patriots do that a little bit more now, but not necessarily their bread and butter. But Peace loves to spin the dial in the back end, right? He's constantly rotating the safeties, rotating into different structures. You see single high pre-snap, then you get 2 high post-snap, that kind of thing. And that's got to be what the Falcons are hoping they can do to Mac Jones, right? Is just essentially confuse him as much as they possibly can. And like what Greg said earlier, maybe get a turnover or 2 where Mac thinks it's, one coverage, but it's actually another, or, he's just a little off on a throw because of the late rotation or what have you. Because Other than that, I look at the two things that you mentioned. One, the run defense. The Patriots had a ton of success last week against Cleveland running the football. Trent Brown is back, and his tape against the Browns was basically a highlight reel of pancakes. I mean, it was incredible tape for an offensive line last week against Cleveland. And then defending the middle of the field is whenever you play the Patriots, even though Brady and Edelman and those guys are not here anymore, defending the middle of the field is still where the Patriots want to be. Jacoby Myers, Hunter Henry, Kendrick Bourne, those are the guys that are going to beat you in the passing game. So it feels like earlier in the week, the Patriots are mentioning it's a bread and butter game because it's a short week and you're not going to reinvent the wheel in 2 days going up against an opponent. But the Patriots can run the football and throw the ball to the middle of the field like they have all year long. And this Falcons defense happens to just be vulnerable in those two spots.
Well, yeah, the Falcons do have this
matchup
going for them before I let you go, Kevin. And that is that they have covered 10 of the last 12 games on Thursday Night Football. And you might go, well, that's a silly stat. Well, they went into the Dallas game 0-8 against the spread before Thursday Night Football. So now they're 0-9. So it mattered against Dallas. Maybe it'll matter against the Patriots, keeping in mind, though, that they have not won or covered yet as a home team this season. They'll play Jacksonville next week, and we'll see how the Atlanta Falcons look without Calvin Ridley and Cordarrelle Patterson, who Kevin believes will not play on tomorrow night. So it may be ugly, but we'll see.
Quite possibly.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be ugly. I really don't. And I'm not just saying that just to make Kevin feel better. This is
it's Thursday night, so anything can happen.
Right. It's the Patriots got lucky in the sense that Cleveland game wasn't a 4-quarter game, right? If the Browns had played them closer and they had to really go toe-to-toe with Cleveland for 4 quarters, then I would have felt even worse about this Thursday night game. But this is Mac Jones, and he was very honest about it at the podium yesterday. This is the first time that he's played on a quick turnaround. They don't do this in college football, right? Where you play on Saturday, then you play on Wednesday. That doesn't exist in college football. So to have to go out there and cram all that preparation into just a couple of days and then play again on Thursday night and have the juices to play again. Like I said, they got lucky that they didn't have to play a 4-quarter game against the Browns. That certainly helps. And Mac came out of that game early and, they were able to rest some guys late, but these Thursday night games are wonky, and this is a road Thursday night game with a rookie quarterback that's never experienced this before. So I don't know if this is going to be close for 4 quarters. Maybe the Patriots end up pulling away in the second half, but I do think it's going to right, for a little bit.
All right. Well,
yeah, I think that's entirely possible.
And the Jets could win on Sunday too. All right, guys. So, Kevin, appreciate it. And again, you have the show. Is it daily on YouTube?
It's Wednesday nights, 8:10 p.m. Eastern. So, if you're listening to this today, it'll be tonight. We also do post-game shows after the game. So there'll be one, on Thursday after the Patriots
Excellent.
game.
Kevin, great job as always. We'll talk to you again sometime later in the season. Definitely, of course, multiple times in the offseason. So appreciate it as always, Kevin.
Yep.
You got
Thanks,
it.
guys.
Take
Have
care.
a good one.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right. Kevin Knight covering the Atlanta Falcons for Falcoholic.com. And again, you can check it out on YouTube. So, that's really it, isn't it, Evan? It's the one thing Atlanta has going for them is it's a Thursday night short week. They're the home team.
Right.
And they've got the veteran quarterback, and New England has the rookie. Other than that, the Patriots have everything else going for them. But as we have seen in the last 2 weeks in the NFL, I'm not sure I remember. It just reminds you of how crazy the league is when you can have Jacksonville beat Buffalo one week, not just the wins or the upsets, but having Dallas blow out Atlanta like that, the way Atlanta had been playing pretty decent football, or New England blows out the Cleveland Browns blow out the Bengals the week before. It's crazy in the NFL, and you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and what I was kind of getting at with Kevin, with Matt Ryan, is I don't know if this is the week. And now the Patriots, because the Falcons are so shorthanded outside of Kyle Pitts, and that's really their only threat if you play man-to-man coverage against them. The Patriots sitting back in cover 2 and cover 3, even with his depleted receiving corps, against a veteran quarterback that can read and diagnose those types of coverages. Looking just at the splits too, the man coverage versus zone coverage splits for Matt Ryan, I don't think this is a game where the Patriots can play the formula that they've played over the last month against Zach Wilson and Herbert and Darnold and Baker and these younger quarterbacks that the mantra against veteran QBs is always, unless you get after them with the pass rush, guys like Matt Ryan, Tom Brady, those guys pick apart zone. Right, they just know where to go with the football against zone. They know what the rules are. They know where their receivers are going to be against the zone coverages. And if you sit back in 3 or 2 the entire game, if you're the Patriots, and just allow Matt Ryan to pick you apart, then I think this could be a closer game than what the Patriots want it to be. So I do anticipate them going back to man coverage this week and doubling Pitts out of the game. And if Russell Gage beats you on Jalen Mills, then you tip your cap and you say, so be it.
All right. Well, we'll see how it goes. Again, anything is possible in the NFL. Patriots on a 4-game win and cover streak will take on Tennessee at home next week, and then goes to Buffalo after that before the bye. Yeah. And look, I was serious, and I'm sure that's what the Patriot fans are probably thinking about as well. You can't just give away the division now, and because nobody expected a month ago that the Patriots would be able to put this type of run together this quick. Now, maybe it could have came later in the season, but it's come a lot faster than I think people thought, especially the way that they blew out the Browns last week. And maybe it also coincides, like you said, with Trent Brown coming back, because on previous shows, we had no idea if Trent Brown was going to come back at all this season.
Yeah.
And not only does he come back, but like you said, he has a big game. And how much more lethal does that make the Patriots when their offensive line can revert back to being one of the best in the league?
Oh, it was fun to watch Trent Brown play on Sunday, and rewatching it was even better, because he's just, you don't see NFL defensive linemen get moved 10 yards off the ball like that too often. Like, you might see that if you watch like a first round pick against in college, right? If you watch Quentin Nelson at Notre Dame against, BYU or whoever it ends up being, you'll see the 290-pound DT get pushed, 14 yards back. But when you see legitimate NFL talent on the Cleveland Browns defensive front get pushed back by Trent Brown and Shaq Mason 5, 6, 7 yards off the line of scrimmage, that's a rare sight on an NFL tape. And that was what Trent Brown was doing. And we talked to him this week, and he said that he was hoping to come back for the Tampa game originally. And then during the week of practice against Tampa, he had a setback, and that's what caused him to go on injured reserve. So he's back, and, the difference that he makes on the line is that they go from being a good, decent run blocking offensive line to a dominant run blocking offensive line. And when you get into these 3rd and 1s or goal line situations, and you can run it right behind 69 and 77 on the right side, there's no stopping.
Especially with Stevenson, who now is starting to pick things up as a rookie.
Right. And then they also ran some packages in short yardage and goal line situations where they had Mason, Brown, and Mike Onwenu as a 6th offensive lineman all on the right side together. And there's no way. There's just no way that you're gonna stop them in that situation. So being able to, from inside the 5-yard line in the red zone, to just muscle the football in at will, that really just makes that red zone offense so much more dynamic and so much more productive. And now the Patriots, who were having trouble finishing drives earlier on in the season as an offense, they've really moved the ball all year long offensively, but they've had issues finishing drives. Now that doesn't look like as much of a problem because you can run it right behind those guys. And if the other teams load up against the run, then you throw it to Hunter Henry, who's one-on-one in the red zone, is a tough guy to cover down there. So they've really figured out the red zone offense. They figured out third down offense with this offensive line rounding into form. It's just a different offense in those two phases. And oftentimes in the NFL, that's the difference between good offenses and bad offenses is, can you convert on third down, and can you make the most out of your scoring chances? And now the Patriots are a team that can do that. But I'm really fascinated to see this defense is been better than the offense for a while now in terms of just consistency, right? The offense had 2 really big weeks. They killed the Jets and then they killed the Browns this past week. But the Charger game and the Carolina game was won by the defense. And the defense has been really good, basically going on a 4 or 5 game streak now defensively. But now they have to face a veteran quarterback for the first time in a while. And the last guy that really got to them was Dak, right? You know, Dak was able to pick the defense apart in the second half of that game. And since then, like I keep listing the names, it's been Herbert, Darnold, Baker, and Zach Wilson / Mike White when it was the Jets. That's not, you know, Matt Ryan's a different animal. Sure. Ryan Tannehill's a different animal. Josh Allen's a different guy than those guys. So we'll see now that the competition is going to get a little bit better for this defense, how for real they really are. Because I don't know if you're going to just sit back and cover 2 like they've been doing in cover 3 and beat Matt Ryan that way. You know, he's going to have the answers to the test.
And look, the big difference is, though, there's no Ridley, there's no Patterson. It looks like there's no Patterson. And if that's the case, but again, it's the NFL. So these guys are professional football players and they could have a good week. And again, it could be a matchup situation. Like you said, if the Patriots play more man, maybe the Falcons will be able to exploit that somehow because of Matt Ryan. Who knows?
Right.
But
with the Patriots too, on their offense, I really am fascinated to see how Mac responds to the short week because Dean Pease is a veteran defensive play caller. He knows what he's doing. He's a really smart defensive coach, and he disguises a lot in the back end. He makes it confusing for quarterbacks, and now you have to go up against him without really prepping for that. That's right. The defense all that much, right? Only one day of practice. Officially, they've had a bunch of meetings and walkthroughs, I'm sure, behind the scenes, but out on the field, only one day of actual practice to go through this Dean Pease defense. And if he's out there rolling, the coverage post snap and confusing everything and blurring the lines between different coverage schemes and stuff like that for Mac, and Mac doesn't really have a ton of practice time preparing for that sort of thing. I think the one benefit that you have is that he's gone against the Patriot defense in practice. He's gone against the Alabama defense in practice, and they love to disguise and rotate and do all those things too. So in some respects, he's got plenty of experience against defenses that do that sort of thing. But I'm interested to see how he handles a veteran defensive mind on a short week and not really have that full time to prepare. Because a lot of the veteran players on the Patriots were saying that everybody's so regimen based in the NFL, right? You have what you're going to do on Wednesday and you have what you're going to do on Thursday. And Mac has never gone through this before, so he doesn't have a Thursday night regimen, right? He doesn't have a schedule of, okay, it's a Thursday night game, so here's what I'm going to do and when I'm going to do it. So I don't know if he's going off of Brian Hoyer or if Josh McDaniels is the one helping him or everybody's helping him, probably a collaboration of things. But that's going to be really interesting to see how he handles it.
On the flip side, and again, another advantage the Patriots are going to have is that Bill Belichick has coached on a godly amount of Thursday night games, and Arthur Smith, this is his first. Next week, we will be back to talk about the Tennessee Titans.
Yes.
So that'll be a big barometer game, no question, for the New England Patriots. Yes, and we'll see how this game goes tomorrow night in Atlanta in a game that the Patriots are supposed to win. But there have been a lot of games over the last 2 weeks and teams that were supposed to win and did not win. So we'll see how that works out. I will also, once again, thanks to Kevin Knight from the Falcoholic.com for joining us. Evan, we'll talk again next week.
Sounds good, Greg.